Item 13, the adoption. It's been moved. The same two that moved the public input have moved and seconded. So, yep. Sorry, Matua. Did you want to move or second it? I just had Councillor Collins and Councillor Hills.
No, sorry, I was sorry.
Yep.
Just pushed the wrong button.
Oh, good boy. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'm just going to invite our staff. So Dave and who's the Senior Policy Advisor, and Kataraina, the General Manager, Community and Social Policy. So it's now on the table for any comment. So tēnā korua, Dave, rawa ko Kataraina.
Tēnā koutou, katoa. Ko Dave Jaggs, tōku ingoa. Yeah, I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in the Community and Social Policy team, and joined today by Kataraina Maki and Liz Civil as well. Just before presenting this, I just wanted to acknowledge and mihi to the large number of people that have been involved in this along the way. I have the honour and privilege of presenting it here to committee today for adoption, but it wouldn't have got this far without all of the people that have been involved along the way. So just really wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of mahi that's gone into this.
Kia ora.
So we are presenting to committee today to seek the adoption of the refreshed Ngā Hapori Momoho Thriving Communities Strategy. Thriving Communities is Council's community wellbeing strategy and was originally adopted in 2014. The draft strategy we're presenting today builds on a 2018 review of that strategy and the subsequent recommendations that were included within that. This new draft strategy sets out how Auckland Council will contribute to creating a fairer, more sustainable tamaki makaurau, where every Aucklander can feel like they belong. To develop this strategy, staff engaged extensively with our diverse communities, as you've heard, and we've engaged with a large number of community groups, mana whenua, Matawaka and Pacific Whānau. Throughout this process, we heard from a wide range of whānau and communities about what they feel like they need to thrive. We know, however, that currently not all Aucklanders have these things, and therefore not everyone is thriving equitably. As well as this, we've heard that tamaki makaurau has faced and continues to face a number of significant challenges, such as COVID, which has only exacerbated these issues. So this means that to achieve the kind of tamaki makaurau we want, the strategy needs to address these three key challenges, which is growing wealth and income inequality, the pace and scale of social change, and the changing climate as well. So this strategy about addressing these challenges, about achieving equitable outcomes, and doing what we can as a council to create a city where everyone has the opportunity to live a good life. So this strategy is outcomes-based, and it focuses on what we want to achieve for communities. The outcomes are the building blocks of what it means to thrive, and are aligned to both the Auckland planned outcomes of belonging and participation, as well as the Māori outcomes of Kia ora tamaki makaurau. The strategy provides focus and direction, but is not prescriptive, which makes it more adaptable to current and future challenges, including some of those which might be unforeseen at the moment. The outcomes are underpinned by 6 objectives, and this provides a bit of direction for the kind of actions that the council group will deliver. We also recognise that we need to ensure that we utilise all the roles and levers available to us as a council group, which will involve working with partners, particularly for areas where we might not hold the primary lever, such as within housing provision. And as we've talked about and heard from Max, we recognise that to deliver on this strategy and outcomes and objectives, we might need to make some shifts in the way we work. So this includes greater integration and less siloed working, utilising more targeted approaches to meet the needs of diverse communities, and focusing on our role as an enabler to encourage community to identify and respond to the things that matter to them. We also need to ensure our investment reflects the intended outcomes of the strategy, and so we've included 4 investment principles that guide the use of the existing resource as well as future business planning. So in terms of next steps, while the strategy is setting out a vision for the next 10 years, we recognise that implementation, especially in the short term, will be crucial to the success of the strategy. So to bring it to life, we'll be developing an implementation plan, as well as monitoring and evaluation framework to assess the impact we're having. There's not currently any additional budget associated with the strategy, therefore there will be a key emphasis on prioritising and redirecting the use of existing resource, including ensuring the outcomes, objectives, key shifts and investment principles are embedded within the council team business planning process. However, as part of the next phase of developing the implementation plan, where we identify that there might be new opportunities for new initiatives in a particular area of space, or to support existing initiatives to grow or scale up, we will be developing a business plan with options for additional funding. These will all be brought back to committee later in the year for consideration and approval. So back to you, Chair, for any pārtai.
Kia ora. Yeah, so look, I don't know, Kataraina or Liz, if there's anything you want to say before I open it up for pārtai and whakaaro. No, Liz?
No further things from me, thank you.
Ka pai. So look, I'll open up for pārtai first. So I have Matua Kake.
Kia ora anō, nei rā te karamihi atu ki a koutou mō tēnei kaupapa ngā hapuri momo ho, tēnā koe. Hey, my question is in terms of, nice words in terms of the sense of inclusion and thriving and so on, but we have a new sector of our community and it's known as the unvaccinated community. In this thriving community strategy, how have we, what's in it to ensure that that unvaccinated community are part of our thriving community?
Kia ora, thank you for your question. So the strategy is at this level still fairly high level in terms of providing that direction, but obviously the spirit is that we want everyone to be included and to have the ability to thrive. So we'll be kind of, I think a part of the spirit of this is kind of looking at kind of why divisions might exist currently, why people currently feel excluded, and what we can kind of do to do that, to include those people. We'll be looking at options to kind of keep people safe as well. So yeah, I guess it would be partnering kind of with a range of community partners to try and kind of include people as much as possible. And again, so looking at the reasons behind that. Liz or Katara, I'm not sure if you wanted to expand on that at all.
Kia ora te rangatira. I just have one example of how we have been trying to work through this with our smoke-free mahi, where if you look at statistics about the percentiles who are unvaccinated and those who smoke, they line up quite a bit. And so if we were to exclude the unvaccinated totally from our programs, then we wouldn't be really reaching the large portion of people who also are currently smoking. So one of the things we do to make sure we're still inclusive with that is actually we work with our DHB partners to ensure that our staff can still work safely with those who are not yet vaccinated, to make sure we're still doing the mahi and giving the messages out around smoke-free. We are still meeting, but in safe ways, in car parks with proper PPE and also combining with the practices that health workers have. So it's just a small example where you really try to think about those groupings. Much of the strategy is about the hard to reach. Even as staff, we've thought really hard about how do we engage with those who are not vaccinated, given that we have really tough health and safety rules for ourselves, and we've been working through those processes in ways where we can do submissions and engagement with those who are unvaccinated and do it in specific ways where, we do it a little bit outdoors. We're lucky it's summer, one person at a time, people can book in, do things online as well. A lot of people who are unvaccinated also don't have access to all the technology for virtual, so we need safe ways to do kanohi ki te kanohi. So those are just small examples, but there's stuff we're already working on, and the action plan is an area where we really do have to engage with those groups and think that through for however long that division might last. Kia ora.
Ka pai, Tony. Matua. Yeah. Ka pai. Claudia, I saw your hand up and I didn't know whether you wanted to reply to Matua Kake's pārtai.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you very much, Matua, for the question. It's a very good question, and I endorse and support Kataraina's comment to that as well. perhaps the other reassurance I can give you is that the current circumstances will eventually change, and we're very closely watching for any changes to the public health information so that we can continue to adapt how we operate our services and how accessible we can make those services to our communities. Currently, what we're doing is we are implementing a number of steps practically and from an operational standpoint to ensure that people who are unvaccinated and who may not be able to enter all of our sites, for example, that they can receive services in other ways. Just yesterday, I visited our East Coast Bays Library, and in that site, we offer a separate entrance for people. People can have a click and collect service, and they often will make front door requests for books and access to some of the library facilities. So we will continue to do that, and we will continue to make sure we can adapt as quickly as possible and as flexibly as possible so that we can support our communities during this time and maximise inclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. I'll go part-time for Councillor Collins.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you for the report. I really liked listening to what was presented and reading it. I've just got maybe one question, and thanks, Matua Tony, because I think you picked up on a really important issue. But there are some really stark there's stark data in the report, and there, Māori Pacific below the median income, high overcrowding of youth, and in particular Pacific. And the interesting one I found was the only 50% of people who were surveyed feel connected and a sense of belonging. So I think we've got some real facilitation work to do for the community and making sure they feel connected. So in that light, well done, everybody. I was just wondering of the idea of targeted approaches, and I know this might be more something for the implementation and monitoring plan. Do you feel that when we get to that point, we're going to be targeted enough and monitoring enough that the groups that have been identified as really suffering at the moment and feeling excluded are going to be served in the way in which this plan is implemented and monitored, that we're not just taking an overarching approach, that we're actually going to pull data, because we know even for rainbow youth that homelessness is a massive issue for them too. So I'm just wondering how, I'm not saying how particular we'll get, but just if we'll get a genuine sense of how we're making an impact on the groups that are really hurting at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And I think that's definitely obviously what we want to kind of achieve, and one of the key elements of this will be developing that monitoring and evaluation framework, and we plan to use existing measures that already exist within the council and within publicly available to us, but we also sort of doing that baseline measure right from the start as well, and then continuing to kind of evolve and use that monitoring and evaluation framework to further inform the future work and kind of future evaluation and implementation plans. So yeah, the use of that data and making sure that we're actually having meaningful impact will be a key element to this, and something we'll be working very carefully alongside the actions as we plan this out. Yeah, Liz and Katarina, would you like to expand at all?
Yeah, perhaps one thing I can mention is we're also looking at how we get and identify interventions that work with certain population groups or life stages or people that are facing different vulnerabilities. So what works, and how can we use what works in Auckland better, so that we know we can be making an impact, and how do we measure that, and how do we do more targeted evaluation? So not just high level data, but measuring some of the interventions that we do much more closely. So it's going to be a combination of all of those things, I think, identifying what we know works and how do we know it works, and applying some of those within the work that we do. Katarina, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to do a data management thing where we go, we all know the problem of attribution of action and activities directly to outcomes, and particularly in the social space where, the report does identify we're not always the key player with the key levers. There are many others. However, we will take the approach we do to I Am Auckland. So I Am Auckland does focus on the outcomes that our tamariki are experiencing. and we try to just show our contribution alongside those outcomes. So even though there are many other organisations contributing to the state of those outcomes, and we are not able to always show attribution to that state from our contributions, it is a way of keeping outcomes focused and not activity focused. And that will also be part of the approach for ngā hapori momoho as well.
Chair, just one quick supplementary, and it might not need to be answered, but I also have a particular interest when the team come back. And one of the points notes that social cohesion, higher levels of social cohesion can equate to increase in economic performance in point 24 of the report, amongst other things like greater innovation and better health and justice outcomes. And I think maybe given what you've all just said, it would be interesting. I know that it says the evidence shows that, but I'd be really interested in that evidence, and in particular the evidence that we're getting from Auckland and our partners to show some of that stuff. So thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, whaftai lawa whionga. Matua Wilcox, he pātai I rua.
Kia ora. The first one is regard to, the key recognition of the strategy is the enabling of mana motuhake or Māori-led approaches to social well-being. So how is the council going to need to shift its approach and structures to enable this to happen? And will the strategy support this? That's the first question.
Yeah, tēnā koe matua. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been mentioned throughout there, and one of the things we really want to do is to enable that mana motuhake. And we recognise that we will need to potentially make some shifts, and also I think, as Max was kind of talking about earlier when he's presenting, sometimes it might be that we need to kind of step back a bit and encourage and enable and kind of look at how we can use our resources to support that, and sort of recognise where there's really good mahi going on already, and where we can support that. So we'll be kind of think about it through our implementation plan, what that looks like and what we need to be doing. And I guess that's the point of the strategy, is to kind of encourage that shift in culture throughout the organisation to kind of think in these ways from now into the future. Yeah, Liz, Kat, any kind of
I mean, perhaps supplementary to that, Dave, is that one of the investment principles is around supporting Māori led and Māori for Māori. So, that will, if those principles are guiding business planning within operational teams, then they will be investing in those sorts of initiatives that are being led for Māori by Māori. So, it's not just an aspiration, it's actually putting investment criteria behind it as well to help drive that kind of shift that we want to see. And to be fair, some of that is happening already. So this is about actually making this more a direction across the council family.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for that. The second one is more of a technical point. One of the recommendations, number A, is tango. How does that? Sorry, it's a different way of using tango. I would have thought whai would have been better or something like that. I'm just trying to understand that. To me, it's tango hi o hu, not we take your shoes off, and I'm trying to understand what tango means in this kaupapa.
Matua, can I just sort of come in and is there any chance just to contact Dave or Liz in regards to your pātai you've just asked, just to sort of, I think that might be an idea, so then there'd be a kōrero that will happen between you fellas. Is that okay, Dave and Liz, instead of looking at the reasoning behind the use of it?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe tango is the word set by the governance group for adopt. So perhaps that needs to happen within the Democracy Services team to look at that use of the word. So we're just using what's specified in the template. Yeah,
but kia ora matua, we'll go and talk to Phil Wilson and his team about the list. I'll send you the list so you can see the list of words we've got given for recommendations as well.
No, I can just hear my nanny.
Saying
You know,
tango here or who.
That's right. Take your shoes off. So I mean, I'm just trying to understand how it means adopt. That's all.
It's like a lot of Māori words, though. Hey, Matua, it's like a lot of Māori words. They mean go forward and backwards.
Yeah, that's right.
Ako means to learn and to teach, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
Tango to put on, to adopt, to take off.
Yeah,
It's the same context. Otherwise, it's Ngāpuhi dialect.
If it's Ngāpuhi dialect, it must be good. So I'll leave it at that. So there's no further pātai matua?
No,
Ka pai te rana?
Ka pai.
Okay, there's no further I don't have in the chat bar. I'm going to go to Whakaaro and Councillor Dalton, you're first, and then followed by Councillor Hills.
Is that quite off? Is my sound okay? Can you hear me all right, or am I breaking up?
Yeah, no, it's still the same, Angela, but I don't know what. Yeah.
Without my headphones. It's still breaking up.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, Official, did you understand that? I didn't, because I see you shaking your head going, yes.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with Councillor Dalton that you're still breaking up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Ange, have you got headphones?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're not working.
There's a suggestion in there that if you turned off your camera, that could possibly work. Can we try that one, Councillor Dalton, please?
What's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, it's not much better.
That's not the issue then, Angela, because, sorry, right. Councillor Dalton.
I'll reboot.
Yeah, still can't. Sorry. So look, while we wait for Councillor Dalton to come back on, I'm going to go to Councillor Hills for your whakaaro, your kōrero, please.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you and all the staff for this work. I think it's awesome to see we have this policy, but it's now completely embedded in kaupapa Māori values first and foremost, and then it extends to the whole community as a diverse community, but built on those Māori values, which I think is very strong and also aligns with the Auckland Plan and across all our other policies moving forward. But I think because the values are so meaningful and often you can take much more from the Pākehā versions of those values, I think that it's going to be much more meaningful going forward. What this policy has seems much more in the positive than in the negative than we have been in the past. So we are talking about vulnerable communities. We are talking about the massive issues we have to deal with, but they are all from a positive perspective about what we can do, what people are doing in the face of adversity and the need to act on equity, and much more in the positive. So I think that is good too. Often we take everything down, can take it down the negative path, which gives people less hope and gives people, less things that feel connected to the council whānau, but also the city. But the other thing is, I think this is also leading much more closely aligned to where my thinking is, and where my thinking was on local board too, that sometimes it is just about council being the awhi, being the support to groups and communities by getting out of the way. So being there to support, being there to give resources where we can, but not being overly complicated and making things more difficult, because I know that people in our communities do give up when things are too difficult or too expensive, or they know it could be done far more easier. I think, as Max said, around things like Proud Centres, that could have been something that we, I know there was a council-led, but we actually enabled many groups across the entire city to do different things within our centres and make sure our centres right across from our libraries to our community centres to our parks and reserves were inclusive for all, but also were exciting. But we also allowed people to be flexible with those spaces and allow and trust community to really put on their events and their add their flavour to it without us being too prescriptive. And I think we're going to do that, and we are seeing that more with Matariki and Chinese New Year and a whole lot of other important things that are happening in our city. So I just want to say that this is building on so much work that has come over the last decade and the previous Thriving Communities strategy as well. So I don't want to disregard any of that, but this is really another step up from where the city is going. So I just want to acknowledge you, Chair, and your Deputy Chair, and also all the staff and community that have been involved in this, and the advisory panels, which give such fulsome advice in those last sort of check periods. But just want to say I'm really happy to see it here, and hope that it continues to be embedded across the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Look, I'm waiting for Councillor Dalton. Councillor Dalton, are you back online? Maya, I've got an idea as to what I have to do from standing orders around waiting until Councillor Dalton comes back just to have a kōrero e whakaaro on this. And I know that Kataraina, the next the next item at least, is part of your team. So Maya, what can I do? Because I don't want to exclude Councillor Dalton in regards to any whakaaro she has. I was thinking of just sort of putting this to the side and then starting item 14, and when Councillor Dalton comes on is to then recommit item 13. So Maya, can you advise, please?
Sorry, helps if I unmute. Yes, we can do that.
Okay,
the short answer.
If it's okay with the committee, because I know that Councillor Dalton is trying to get back on, but I also know that she wanted to give her whakaaro about the particular item. So if it's okay with the committee, I would want to go back to 14, then I'll come back when Councillor Dalton's on and her microphone is working, and then we can finish off with 13. So if there's no objections. Yeah. Is that okay with everybody? 3-second rule. So sorry, Dave and Liz, I just need to make sure that Councillor Dalton has a say. Okay, kapai. So Maya, we'll move to, and Kalinda and Sophie, can we move to item 14, please?